Interim Front Row Mayor Matt Tederick is here in the Royal Examiner Studio today. Matt, maybe a little background first.
Sure.
You're a longtime Republican Committee, Warren County Republican Committee activist, former chairman, former supervisor back in the 90s.
That's correct.
I believe you were around for the signing of the corridor agreement, weren't you?
Absolutely.
Awful close to it, 98, 99.
Yeah, it was our agreement.
Yeah. And you've been out of the direct electoral politics for a while. Why did you volunteer to accept an appointmentship to be interim mayor now and jump back in?
Yeah, so it was a week before Memorial Day, that Saturday, I received a phone call from a council member who was sharing with me the status of the then mayor Bill Seelock as vice mayor moving up to be interim mayor, and they determined at that time that code would not allow him to be the interim mayor until the next election. They had sought out several individuals to be mayor, and apparently they could not get consensus, and so he asked me if I would consider. Candidly, I chuckled over the phone. I laughed, and then I said, "Are you crazy?" But that he really pressed me hard, and frankly,
you weren't thinking you might be a polarizing figure, were you?
Right? Yeah. I actually said that. I said I'm with my background, I'm very outspoken in my political views and my political activism, and I said, I'm not certain it's in your best interest to put me up as mayor, but the current affairs of this community, the EDA scandal, and the tragic death of Sheriff McKeithrin, everything that's taken place since then and now, honestly and truly, Roger, is just a sense of duty. I just felt like I had something to offer from a leadership perspective, and I also shared with the individual and others that, look, I have no intention of seeking the mayorship during the special election. I will serve my time, and I will do my duty, and hopefully I can set some policies and procedures in place that will help the community moving forward, and that's how it happened. I mean, there was nothing more to it than that.
So you've been in office about 2.5 months now, and as I understand it, after the special election, whoever wins that will be sworn in fairly quickly. It won't be like the county election.
That's
or
correct.
A normal rotation.
Correct.
When you're not appointed till the next year.
Correct.
It'll be pretty immediate. So I think it'll be about 5.5 months you will have been in the interim mayorship.
Correct.
Do you think you can make an impact then? And is your decision a hard one, not that you're not going to run?
Yeah, it's a very difficult decision not to run. I've had a tremendous amount of encouragement and support from across the community. I mean, individuals that are on a completely different political aisle than I am, have called me and encouraged me to run. They encouraged me to reconsider. I've had other individuals in our community do so. So it was a very difficult decision, but two reasons. One is, and I said it when I announced, I try, I work really hard that what I say I mean, and my word's my bond. And when I told the council members that I spoke to that I would not seek the election, I meant it, and I think they would have they would have released me from that position had I decided to run. But also I have some business interests that I need to concentrate on. I mean, I'm in a very good place in my business career that I needed 6 months to do some projects that I've been working on for a long time, and I owe it to my family, my business partners, to focus attention. To do the job of mayor, in my opinion, and to do it well, requires a tremendous amount of time and devotion. I mean, I'm putting in a fair amount of time right now, and that I could be spending in other places.
Mayors may not have a vote, but they do have a leadership role.
It's a tremendous, it's the captain of the ship to some degree, and the mayor sets the vision and the tone, and really the agenda, the overall agenda for council. And you know, when one of the first meetings that I had with staff, the Wednesday after I was appointed, frankly, that next morning, the first question I ask is, what do you need? What do you need from me? And the response was, we desperately need direction. So that's what I've been trying to do in this time period, is just giving them direction.
And speaking of direction, we're coming off the joint meeting of the full town council and the full county board of supervisors about the EDA and its future, which was sort of propelled forward by the liaison conversation.
Sure,
where you brought up the possibility of unilateral disbandment of the EDA. But the impression I got from your comments during that joint meeting this week was that that's not really your agenda, that you'd like to bring the county and the town closer together to work towards a solution and a fixing of whatever went wrong.
Maybe it's semantics or maybe it was perception. My recollection of the liaison meeting was that we needed to have a discussion about the EDA, and that discussion needed to include the possible dissolution. I also shared with Chairman Murray at that time that in the event that the EDA is dissolved, the town, by a 1991 resolution, the town would get 50% of the assets and the county would get 50% of the assets. And I also shared with him that through legal actions, through the town's civil suit, in the event the town were to pursue an aggressive legal strategy, it would be it's my assessment, based upon the advice I've been given, that the EDA would be in a significant financial situation, which we could, in essence, force a dissolution if that were the case. So, you know, that's not my intention at all. You asked earlier, you know, what if I felt like I could have any influence in this role as interim mayor. I would say yes, and I would also say that I have. You know, the fact that we were able to have a joint meeting between the town and the county, the fact that we were able to appoint this committee to look at reforming the EDA, I think that's a big step moving forward. This community, you know, the community itself, we have an interest in the future of the EDA. And we have a future interest as it relates to the town and county governments. And, you know, the public, from my perspective, the public has been very angry and upset, and rightly so, with everything that's been transpired, that has transpired at the EDA. So I think this is a first step. I think it's the first of many steps. I could see the committee coming together, coming up with a majority opinion, possibly a minority opinion, and then I could see a citizens group, a citizens committee being formed to evaluate the report, evaluate the town's policies and procedures as it relates to the EDA, evaluate the county's policies and procedures, and let the citizens group come up with their recommendation. So I think this is a process. This is not uncharted territory necessarily. Over the course of the lifespan of the EDA, there has been many times when the EDA has been reorganized, reformed, the membership has been changed, the focus and the mission has changed. So this is just one of, you know, many time periods in history that we have done this, and I think it's overdue, frankly.
Well, I think a big part of it will be learning from past mistakes, and one thing that went on in the joint meeting was there were a lot of questions. And I found myself thinking, where were all these questions over the last 5 to 10 years?
Yeah.
It seems like, particularly maybe the EDA board, the county, which has more direct oversight, the town, which has abdicated a certain amount of oversight, which we could talk about also.
Sure.
I think we both agree that maybe they didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
But it was almost like they were hypnotized and just following down the yellow brick road. I remember a work session with the council where the People Inc. rep, I think his name was Phipps, Brian Phipps, came and said, well, if you've got a 2.65 or 3.65, I can't remember what it was, fixed interest rate for a 30-year loan, you might want to take that over the new market tax credits. But council seemed to have an attitude that, well, we're going to get this 9 years without interest, and just, you know, didn't want to hear it. And now it's a huge part of this. How much does the EDA owe us?
Sure.
What can be learned from how the lack of questioning sort of...
I tell you the biggest thing I think that, and it's just my observation, accountability is talked about a lot, but it's not implemented a lot. Government officials, government boards, appointed boards need to hold people accountable, and it's sometimes we get into this mindset of just accepting the status quo and not wanting to rock the boat and not wanting to ask the questions because it may be perceived in a negative light, or it may hurt someone's feelings, or whatever the case is. I just think there was a breakdown of accountability. And look, I have my personal opinions, and most of which I will keep to myself. But I do believe that if elected officials, appointed officials, people on boards, people on past boards, past elected officials, etc., if they were to truly look at this situation, I think there was a breakdown of accountability and a breakdown of oversight. And I think, look, it happened. We can't change the past, but we sure as hell can learn from it. And that's what I'm after right now is, I've had people from elected officials questioning my motives. I've had citizens questioning my motives as it relates to this committee. I had a phone call on the way in from a close friend of mine who said, "What in the world are you doing appointing this committee and having the same people that were involved with the EDA process or scandal as part of members of it?" And I said, "Look," I said, "we're moving forward, and the legal litigation that's going to take care of itself in the judicial system. But what we have to do is we have to learn from our mistakes of the past so that we don't make them again in the future." I made the comment the other night, and I really believe it, that every single elected official that I know in this community, and probably for 20 years and 20, 30 years behind us, they want to see a thriving economic development engine in our community. What I don't want to do is I don't want to put blinders on, and I would encourage the committee members, and I said this 2 nights ago, don't put your blinders on and go in there with a preconceived notion of what that needs to look like. Be creative. Be honest with yourself and say, what is the art of the possible? What can this economic development engine or apparatus, what can it look like? I made the comment the other night, Colorado Springs. I believe it's Colorado Springs, if I'm correct. I believe their EDA function is tied closely with the Chamber of Commerce function, and there's a hand-in-glove relationship with that.
Nikki of the Chamber did not look very excited.
No, and I get it, and I haven't talked to Nikki about that, but I just threw that out there as the art of the possible. There's a lot of different ways for us to accomplish the goal, and the goal is good quality living wage jobs, a good solid industrial and commercial tax base. I think that's the goal, and if that's the goal, how do we want to get there? And so, I don't know what's going to happen with this committee.
Do you think perhaps the addition of a few qualified citizens that weren't directly involved might help with that criticism that you're appointing the same people that are in the middle of it to fix it?
Yeah, that's a very fair question, and so let me rewind a little bit. Would
it even be possible at this point?
Will be possible. So I will have Roger Bianchini provide breaking news at the Royal Examiner. How about that?
We
love breaking news.
We like that. We like to break news.
So my first speech, okay, I suggested a citizens committee be formed. I don't know if you remember that.
I think so.
A citizens committee be formed to look at the policies and procedures and what went right and what went wrong. I think I used language similar to that. Originally, my intention was to recommend a citizens panel be formed to do basically what this committee is doing plus more, right? So this committee is going to look at just the EDA and how it needs to be reformed, from a governmental standpoint.
From people close to the EDA process.
Close to the process.
And you can see the benefit of that, but like you say, there's a public mood.
There's a public perception of that, right? And so what I had on my agenda, the agenda that was presented, I had another line item which was appointment of a citizen committee. and probably 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday, I deleted it, and I said, you know what, I think we just need to take this one step at a time, because I had no idea, candidly, I had no idea how the county was going to react to this meeting. Look,
the liaison meeting had been a little tense at times.
Yeah, the liaison meeting was a little tense, and I know that Dan Murray, who I think of as a friend, who I know has the best interest of this community at heart, and I'm friendly with the other supervisors, but I didn't know. I knew what I wanted to get accomplished. I knew what council, more importantly, I knew what council wanted to get accomplished, and I didn't know how the tone and the tenure of the meeting was going to be. So I didn't want to push too hard, I guess, and so
push too many things all at once.
Yeah, too many new ideas and confuse people and confuse them. For all I know, the meeting could have been. There was discussion. What would happen if people start walking out? The meeting, as the process went on, I could not have been. I want to sound corny and say as proud, but I was so pleased with how the elected officials handled themselves during that meeting. I think it was a healthy discussion. The council needed an opportunity, and I shared this after the meeting with a board of supervisor meeting. The council needed an opportunity to vent themselves, because they had been asking for information through FOIA requests and whatnot, and I'm not talking disparagingly to the EDA. They were in a situation where they couldn't really provide the information yet. The accounting was in such turmoil that they couldn't provide the information. So to be able to ask the questions, to be able to get some, maybe not the answers per se, but to get an idea of when we can expect the answers. That was a tremendous milestone. And then to get the committee formed and to have unanimous vote, again, I think that's a great step forward. So as I see the process, and this is something I plan to discuss at the next joint meeting. So phase 1 of this is the committee gets formed. The committee's going to come up with their reports. Phase 2 of this is the citizens committee gets established. And
will that be at the next joint meeting?
Yeah, I hope
I believe is
the 30th
October 29th. Not the 30th. That was a Saturday.
Yeah, so it would be
29th.
Probably the next time we have a joint meeting, which was next couple weeks.
And
with
that
the
will
EDA.
include the EDA.
EDA. Yeah, I want to broach the subject of getting a citizen committee established.
Alert the media. We have a scoop.
Yeah. So of getting a citizen committee established, who's going to take this report that was done by government officials. Take this report, to use that as the foundation for their mission, and say, here's what this committee has recommended. Now, evaluate this report. Now, I want you to look at the policies and procedures of the town and county government as it relates to the EDA. Now, what's your conclusion? So, I believe strongly, and I'm going to say it now, and I think you're one of the first people I've shared this with, and I'm going to say it after I leave office as interim mayor. This process is going to fail unless we get community buy-in. Okay? We must have the community's trust in our local governments and in the economic development machine or engine. We have to get the community to accept and buy in and have confidence for what we're doing. If you don't have that, let me tell you what's in my assessment. Roger, I've been involved in public service and politics for many years. My assessment is that you're going to have more turmoil in the future as it relates to the interaction between government and the people. Look, there needs to be a mind shift. Okay, there are those elected people, and I'm not saying just in Warren County and just in Front Royal or past elected members, who believe that they know better, or who believe that the people are just entitled to their opinion. Okay, no, elected officials works for the people. They are the stakeholders. The citizens of Warren County and the citizens of the town of Front Royal The public servants answers to them. And I think it's vitally important that we get buy-in from the community. And the only way I know to do it, and again, I'll be off as an interim mayor, the only way I need to do it is you get citizens together, you get citizens to evaluate the committee's report, and you get citizens to consider the policies and procedures, and the citizens make a recommendation to the elected bodies and say, we have gathered all this information, we've assessed all this information, we've discussed and debated all this information, and this is what we think is best for the community. That's the only way I see it. I see us moving forward. Again, the legal actions, the legal issues, that's a whole different lane. I have no involvement in that, and I want no involvement in that. But what I can get involved with, and what I think the community can get involved with, is what does this community look like from an economic development perspective next year, or the year after, or 5 or 10 years, or for your next generation? That's what, in 1995, when I was elected, actually 96, we had a very clear goal and a very clear mission. And the mission was to create 1,000 living wage jobs in Warren County. And the reason that was a very clear goal and a very clear mission was because it was written on the second page of the CDAC report, made up of citizens that got together to look at the economic development future.
CDAC being what?
Community Economic Development Action Committee, I think, or something to that effect. May have the acronym slightly off. The town. I know that Joe Waltz, as the town manager, he has a copy of that report. If any citizens would like to have it, just contact Town Hall, and they will provide it to you electronically. But is it a perfect document? Oh, probably not. But it's a document that probably a couple dozen citizens were involved with and met regularly. I was fortunate enough to be asked to be part of the economic development portion of that document, and so I know the time and effort that went in to process different ways of conducting business. So that's what I think is the future, and based upon the work that was done by creating that document, and based upon the volunteers that bought into that process, the elected officials ended up buying into that process. 96 comes around, and you have a board of supervisors and a town council that I have been told by people on the outside and inside that we have not had the working relationship between that town council and that board of supervisors in that moment in history. We haven't had it since. But look at the prosperity that we had during that time period, because we set a vision, we set our goals, and we executed on our mission, and we ran infrastructure, we established the county in a way that would allow the commercial developments to take place. It took place is there in 522, which I think maybe there's a citizen or two that may not like it, but I believe the vast majority of this community loves the commercial developments that we have and are excited to know that we have the tax base coming from the industry that we have. So that's what it's all about, Roger. I mean, that's why I was willing to take this role.
Getting back to what you said about the community trust, I think a good deal of the mistrust comes from something that's in the Cherry Beckert report itself, which they devote a few pages to in the very front of their summary about scope limitations, where the information they got, most all of it was from the EDA, from the county. Some areas they wanted to look into, all of a sudden they said, we've spent enough money on this, we're not going to go any further. It makes a lot of people suspicious that the investigation was pointed in certain ways, maybe away from other ways. Whether that's true or not, we don't know.
Yeah.
But just the fact that they felt compelled to say, look, we had some limitations, it's going to make it a little hard to get that trust back, I think.
No doubt. I'll take it a step further. The manner in which the EDA pursued this incident is, in my opinion, contrary to the norm. The town government, as soon as they found alleged fraud or alleged embezzlement, they immediately turned it over to the state police.
I don't know how many people understand this, but I think this whole thing began to unravel back in May of last year, when the finance director of the town, B.J. Wilson, had been instructed by council to look into the internal finances in order to see if they could borrow $500,000 from themselves, interest-free, to fund the police radio upgrades.
Right.
And he came across these debt service overpayment histories that was around $300,000.
Sure.
And it was just by accident began to unravel. And this sort of gets back to one thing I did want to talk to you about, is the county took over the town's operational funding of the EDA. I'm not sure how many years ago.
Yeah,
and it was
15 or 10.
Maybe, somewhere around there, maybe a little less. And that was sort of a part of this ongoing corridor negotiation after the town lost the pilot fees in the corridor to be compensated for allowing commercial development in the county outside of town for lost tax revenue. There's some people on council that say, well, once we stopped operational funding, we don't have the level of oversight the county does. I think that was a mistake. I don't think they had to give up that oversight. They should have kept it. And because it wasn't like they were giving up operational funding, the county was compensating them for the central water into the corridor in an ongoing, still ongoing negotiation. And
so
let's address what the town's role in oversight should be in the future, and should have ever dropped off with that funding change.
So I'm going to punt the question. It's not up to me to make a determination of what it needs to look like in the future. I want this committee and the Citizens Committee to advise the town government and advise the Board of Supervisors, this is what we think it needs to look like in the future. So I really don't have an answer to that one, what it needs to look like. What I will say is I agree with you, and I think I even said it Tuesday night. There was the perception that when the town stopped funding operations, therefore the town shouldn't be involved in anything that went on at the EDA. Now, that perception may have, I think it's a fair statement to my friends on the Board of Supervisors. I think they perceive that. Hey, town washed their hands of the EDA. Granted, town citizens are county citizens, therefore we're going to, since we're handling all the appointments and since we're handling all the oversight, it's...
And as became apparent at the meeting, for those who it wasn't apparent to already, the town was relying on the EDA for a lot of economic development, the funding of the police stations, the development of AVTEX. There's a reason that the town's looking for $15 million in allegedly misdirected town assets.
And so I think the town should have done a better job at saying, though we're not giving an operational stipend, because that's really what it is, right? I mean, I think the EDA was a profitable entity at one time, generating income, of which, by the way, the 1991 resolution states that when the EDA generated profits above operational requirements, that 50% of the profits were to be distributed back to the town and back to the county. That's documented. But I think when the town stopped funding the operational side or stipend or a piece of the operational side for the EDA, I think the town government and town elected officials as well at that time, I think they washed their hands. And the what was missed is the fact that the town government has an interest in economic development, not unlike the county government. And the town assets that were commingled, the EDA, for instance, was the title of the EDA. The title of Royal Phoenix is in the EDA's hand. That's in the town limits. So we have a real interest in what that property looks like. And
the biggest single financial item in the EDA civil suit to regain assets is the IT federal situation, the $10 million loan.
But through it all, I had a phone call this morning at 7:30 in the morning from a member on the EDA board. Had a very, very pleasant conversation, and in the conversation,
people should understand the board's largely been retooled since.
And again, I want to thank, I don't know if I did it Tuesday night, but I want to thank the volunteers who are stepping forward at the EDA level. I'd like to thank Doug Parsons. I think they definitely have they have the right ideas of how to start moving forward and start creating a true economic
we have
development.
3 very new members:
good
Greg
people.
Harold, Jeff Brown, and Jory Martin.
Yeah, good people.
And I think, as Gray Blanton told me after the meeting Tuesday, I think the longest sitting member now may be 2 years, and that might be him.
Yeah.
So there's been a huge turnover.
Huge turnover, and I think that's healthy. But if I were to ask a citizen, or if I were to ask you, what's the primary...
Media are citizens, aren't we?
Exactly, you're a citizen.
So, wait, are we enemies of people?
No, you're not enemies of people. Maybe enemies of some, but not the people. What's the role of the EDA? What would your first instinct be? If I were to ask you, what is the role of the EDA?
To recruit commercial business here that will increase the commercial tax base and take some of the tax burden off citizens.
What a wonderful concept. Recruit, business, industrial, tax base, right? So somewhere through this process, somewhere in the last couple decades, when I left the Board of Supervisors in 2000, I know during that time period, we had a very clear idea of what the purpose of the EDA is. Okay? Somewhere in the last 10 years or 20 years, something has happened. And here's what I think has happened. The EDA has become a banking institution for the town and the county. And the town and the county has perceived the EDA as their private banking institution to help them fund projects, and
financial consulting is part of that.
Sure. So they've put the emphasis on the financial or the ability for the EDA to raise funds and get certain types of bonds and certain types of... They've put the emphasis of the EDA to do that, as opposed to what you just said is your opinion of what the primary purpose of the EDA is. And
so, I think from both of us talking to Doug Parsons, he would agree with our assessment of what their primary role is.
I think Doug, I've had that, yes. I think Doug, and I think the chairman does, and I think the members of the EDA board...
Not only recruit, but help the ones that are here survive and flourish and expand.
Well, let's think about this for a second. So I'm starting to pontificate. I apologize to the audience, but let's think about this for a moment. When's the last referendum we've had for debt service in Warren County?
You tell me.
I want to say approximately 93, 92. Right? Though it's my opinion.
That's one reason I don't remember.
Yeah. Well, it's my opinion. Now, again, I think the laws have changed, and I'm speaking, and I'm sure I'm going to get corrected by many. It's my opinion. The Code of Virginia for counties, when debt and financing projects was originally thought of at the government level, that if the government intends to incur a significant amount of debt, that debt should go to the people through a referendum for a general obligation bond to fund that project. Okay. Well, then what's happened is over the years, the people kept saying, no, we don't want to incur that debt. No, we don't want that. We don't think that project is necessary at that time. And the government wasn't doing a good enough job communicating with the people and communicating with their citizenry and saying, this is the necessity for this project. This is the benefit this project's going to do. So the referendums would fail. So what's happened through this process, going away, if you look back in the 90s of when the EDAs were really flourishing, I think George Allen did a great example of how he structured the EDA at the state level and local EDAs and whatnot. The primary focus of these organizations were to be economic development. And now what's happened is, and I don't mean this, I really don't mean this to be insulting to the EDA or to elected officials, but I believe in the past that people looked at the EDA first as their primary financial institution, and not the institution that which it was established to be, which was a economic development institution. And so if I had any input on the committee, and they're gonna do their job, and I'm sure they're gonna do it well, I think they need to figure out a way of setting up the guidelines by which you have the financial institution of the EDA and the economic efforts of the EDA distinctly identified. Now, whether that's under one organization, whether that's separated into two organizations or separated somehow, but I would like to see the level that the town government and the county government they're using the EDA, and this is not just a Front Royal and Warren County problem. This is statewide. I think we need to have a serious look at the level that we're using the EDA to fund all these projects and all this debt that we're incurring in our community.
And even if it exists or continues to exist in a certain level, have your own people oversee it or check it. I think it was operating that way, like you said, expanded that way, sort of in a vacuum.
Yeah.
They were just accepting on both the county and the town side what they were being told.
Sure, I think there's plenty of finger pointing that has been going on and probably will for the near future. But yeah, so that's just my 2 cents for what it's worth.
Now, is it my understanding that you're going to come back with us possibly every week or so to discuss current situations with the town level?
I'm happy to do that.
We've been here quite a while now. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Yeah,
there are many things we can talk about. If you could come back, we could address the status of the Crooked Run 2 situation and where the council is on that.
Yeah.
I don't know how close a decision you are on that now.
Yeah. Let me touch on that briefly, and we can elaborate in the future. And I said this at the council meeting the other night. We have a business. The owners of the Crooked Run project, Crooked Run West project, and the developer of it.
The M&M boys, I like to call them,
yeah.
Hero and Murphy.
Yeah, okay. So, they're a business operation that wants to do business in our community. And I am not going to take a preconceived approach and say, no, that business should not come here, or yes, that business should come here. I think what needs to happen is that we need to gather the facts. And over the last several months, there's been adjustments in the project. There's been a lack of factual information collected by the town government, maybe collected by I can't speak for the county, but we're in the position right now that we are just collecting facts. There's been a lot of discussion about what is the capacity, and some citizens seem to know what the facts are. Okay, I think they're really more conjectures or opinions than they are facts. So if
it's on social media, that may likely be the case.
It kind of reminds me of a family member who once said that if it's on the internet, it's got to be true. So we're in a fact gathering stage and then once the facts are gathered, then I think council will have a deliberate discussion based upon the facts and based upon what they want to, and then they can add in their philosophical opinions and the vision. But I think it's important, and what I've been driving towards is I've been encouraging council to say, look, get the facts, and once you have the facts in front of you, render your opinion. And I made the comment Monday night at the council meeting that I really like to treat people the way I would like to be treated. And if I'm a business owner and I come to do business in our community, I think we owe it to them to show them the proper respect that they're deserved, because they want to do business in our community. So I don't want to give them...
And I might put forth a proposition related to that statement, and we may want to revisit this at a future interview, but I think part of that discussion is going to have to be what's the situation and what's the holdup with the about 750 acres of undeveloped land that's earmarked for development in town. Part of 600 acres, of which 604 acres of which was friendly annexed into the town for residential.
Put that on your next discussion. I'll give you breaking news on that too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's been a sore subject And
because I know there's been comment by
Yeah.
council, well, it's just not happening. Well,
Yeah.
why isn't it happening? Maybe we should have a joint meeting with the council,
Yeah.
the planning commission,
Yeah.
and FRLP
Yeah.
and find out what the hang-ups are there.
Let's talk about that project.
Yeah,
let's talk about that. See, and the reason you first asked if I was willing to come back, I am willing to come back, and I will be very open and let you and let the public know an observation that I've had in this interim role is that we do not do the town government. I can't speak for the county. I can speak from the county.
You
only,
used to be able to.
Well, I can speak from the county as just a citizen in my observation. Our local governments are not doing a good job in communicating with the people. In this new era of social media and the digital communication realm that we're in, we really need to identify a better way to get our message out, get the facts out. I think a lot of this that I see, and look, I've been in the back burner. I haven't been actively involved in the operations of government in a long time, and so. But what I do recognize is that people want accurate information, and I believe we have a responsibility at the government level of accurately disseminating information to the public, and so that the public can take that information, absorb it, and then let that public make their opinion. Of course, they're entitled to that. I mean, we want to hear their opinions, but right now, as a good example, in the town government, and again, this is not being critical of any body or any entity, but you have the wonderful police department that we have, and they have a Facebook page and they communicate by Facebook, and you have a Town of Front Royal
I want to say
page.
that Royal Examiner has a certain complaint about strict communications through Facebook. We still like to get those press releases sometimes too, but
why not? We should get that. So I think we need to have a communications element within our government. I'm not suggesting a communications department, but I think we need to identify a person or people who are skilled in communications to assume this role and figure out a way to consolidate our message and get our message out to the public in a better form than we are now. It's just one area that I think we can really improve upon.
Well, Matt, I look forward to having you back.
Yeah.
Exploring, maybe getting some more breaking news on development, Crooked Run, FRLP related, whichever it might be.
Sure.
Or interrelated
Happy
somehow.
To do that. Yeah.
And just talk about things as they come up over the next three and a half months that you're in office.
Great.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Roger. Appreciate it.